In the amen, truth takes its stand with faith and love, hand in hand.
Pharaoh dreamed. He was standing by the Nile when 7 healthy fat cows came up from the river. Then 7 thin and ugly cows came and ate the fat cows, but they remained thin. Pharaoh dreamed again. 7 full good ears of grain were growing on one stalk. Then 7 thin scorched ears swallowed the full ears. Pharaoh was troubled and called all his magicians and wise men, but none could interpret the dreams. The cupbearer remembered Joseph, who had interpreted his and the baker's dreams in prison. Pharaoh sent for Joseph immediately. Joseph said, "The dreams are one. 7 years of plenty will come, followed by 7 years of famine. Now is the time to prepare." Joseph advised Pharaoh to appoint a wise and discerning man to oversee the land, storing food during the years of plenty to survive the famine. Pharaoh and all his officials were impressed by Joseph's wisdom. Pharaoh said, "Can we find anyone like this man, one in whom is the Spirit of God?" He appointed Joseph over all Egypt, giving him authority second only to Pharaoh himself. Pharaoh gave Joseph Asenath, daughter of an Egyptian priest, as a wife. Joseph went throughout Egypt managing the stores, gathering grain during the 7 plentiful years. The 7 years of plenty came to an end, and the famine began. People from all lands came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph, who had prepared for this exact moment. When Jacob learned there was grain in Egypt, he sent 10 of his sons to buy food. But he did not send Benjamin, fearing harm might come to him. Joseph's brothers came to Egypt and bowed before him, not recognizing him. But Joseph recognized them and remembered his dreams. Joseph spoke harshly and accused them of being spies. They insisted they were honest men, sons of one father, with a youngest brother at home and one who was no more. Joseph demanded they prove their honesty by bringing Benjamin. He imprisoned them for 3 days, then released all but Simeon, whom he kept bound. As the brothers traveled home, they discovered their payment for grain returned in their sacks. Their hearts sank, filled with dread, asking, "What has God done to us?" They told Jacob all that happened. He mourned the loss of Simeon and feared sending Benjamin, saying, "Everything is against me." The famine continued, and Jacob told his sons to return to Egypt for food. Judah reminded him they could not go without Benjamin. Judah said, "I will be responsible for him. If I do not bring him back, let the blame fall on me forever." Jacob reluctantly agreed and sent them with gifts and double the silver. The brothers returned to Egypt with Benjamin. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he ordered a feast to be prepared at his house. Fearing they were being punished for the silver in their sacks, they spoke nervously to Joseph's steward, who reassured them, "Your God has given you treasure. I received your payment." When Joseph entered and saw Benjamin, his own mother's son, his heart burned with love. He hurried away to weep in private, then returned and ordered the feast to begin. The brothers ate at Joseph's table, astonished as they were seated in the exact order of their birth. Benjamin's portion was 5 times larger than the rest. They drank and rejoiced together. Joseph commanded his steward, "Fill their bags with food, return each man's silver, and place my silver cup in the youngest one's sack." The steward obeyed. At dawn, the brothers set out for home with their donkeys, relieved and unaware of the trap. Joseph's steward pursued them and accused them of stealing the silver cup. Shocked, the brothers protested their innocence, saying, "Whichever of us has it shall die, and the rest shall be slaves." The steward searched each sack, beginning with the oldest and ending with the youngest. To their horror, the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. The brothers tore their clothes in grief and returned to Joseph's house, where they fell before him. Joseph declared that Benjamin must remain as his slave. Judah stepped forward, pleading with Joseph, "Take me instead of the boy. Let him return to his father, for his life is bound to the boy's life." Overcome with emotion, Joseph ordered everyone else to leave the room. Alone with his brothers, he wept so loudly that the Egyptians and Pharaoh's household heard it. Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" His brothers could not answer him, for they were terrified. Joseph comforted them, "Do not be distressed or angry with yourselves. It was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. You meant evil against me, but God used it for good." Joseph embraced Benjamin and wept on his neck. Then he kissed all his brothers, and they wept together. Pharaoh heard the news and was pleased. He told Joseph to bring his father and family to Egypt, promising them the best of the land. Joseph gave his brothers provisions, clothing, and silver. They returned to Canaan and told Jacob, "Joseph is still alive and he rules over Egypt." Jacob's spirit revived, and he resolved to go see his son. Israel set out with all he had. At Beersheba, he offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. In a vision at night, God spoke to Jacob, "Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for I will make you into a great nation there. I will go with you, and Joseph's hand will close your eyes." Jacob's sons carried him, their children, and their wives in the wagons Pharaoh had provided. They brought their livestock and possessions into Egypt. The sons of Israel, their families and descendants were listed. 70 in all went down into Egypt with Jacob. When Jacob arrived in Goshen, Joseph went to meet him. As soon as he saw his father, Joseph threw his arms around him and wept for a long time. Joseph instructed his brothers to tell Pharaoh they were shepherds, so they could settle in the land of Goshen, a place set apart for them. Joseph brought 5 of his brothers before Pharaoh. They told Pharaoh they were shepherds seeking a place to live. Pharaoh granted them the land of Goshen, and even offered to put capable men in charge of his livestock. Joseph then brought in his father Jacob. Jacob stood before Pharaoh and blessed him. Joseph settled his family in the best part of the land, the region of Ramesses, just as Pharaoh commanded. He provided food for his father, brothers, and their households. The famine was severe. Egyptians came to Joseph, first exchanging money, then livestock, and finally land for food. Pharaoh became owner of all the land, while Joseph managed it wisely. Joseph established a law that 1/5 of the produce belonged to Pharaoh, except for the priests, who received a fixed allotment. The people thanked Joseph, saying, "You have saved our lives." Jacob lived in Egypt 17 years. As his death approached, he made Joseph swear to bury him not in Egypt, but in the land of his fathers. When Jacob grew weak, Joseph was told, "Your father is ill." He took his 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, with him. Jacob summoned his strength and sat up on his bed. Jacob recalled God's appearance at Luz, where he promised to make him fruitful and to give the land to his descendants. Jacob declared that Joseph's 2 sons would be reckoned as his own. Joseph brought his sons forward. Jacob kissed and embraced them, saying, "I never expected to see your face again, and now God has let me see your children too." Joseph positioned Manasseh, the firstborn, at Jacob's right hand, and Ephraim at his left. But Jacob crossed his hands, placing his right hand on Ephraim, the younger. Jacob blessed the boys, invoking the God of his fathers Abraham and Isaac, and the God who had been his shepherd all his life. He prayed for them to grow into a multitude on the earth. Joseph tried to correct his father, saying Manasseh was the firstborn. But Jacob refused, saying, "I know, my son, but Ephraim will be greater, and his descendants will become a multitude of nations. Jacob gave Joseph an extra portion of land, and his words made clear that God's promise would continue through his family. Jacob called his sons together, saying, "Gather around so I can tell you what will happen to you in days to come. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might, the beginning of my strength. But you will no longer excel, for you went up to your father's bed and defiled it. Simeon and Levi are brothers. Their swords are weapons of violence. I will scatter them in Israel. Judah, your brothers will praise you. The scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until the one comes to whom it belongs. Zebulun will live by the seashore and become a haven for ships. Issachar is a strong donkey lying down between two burdens. He will submit to forced labor. Dan will provide justice for his people. He will be a serpent by the roadside, striking the horses' heels. Gad will be attacked by raiders, but he will attack them at their heels. Asher's food will be rich. He will provide delicacies fit for a king. Naphtali is a doe set free that bears beautiful fawns. Joseph is a fruitful vine by a spring, whose branches climb over a wall. Though attacked, his bow remains steady. The Almighty blesses you with blessings of heaven above and the deep below. Benjamin is a ravenous wolf. In the morning he devours the prey, in the evening he divides the plunder. After blessing each of his sons, Jacob instructed them to bury him with Abraham and Isaac in the cave of Machpelah. Then he drew his feet into the bed, breathed his last, and was gathered to his people. Joseph threw himself on his father Jacob, who just passed away in his bed, wept over him and kissed him. Then he ordered that Jacob's body be embalmed, and the Egyptians mourned for 70 days. Joseph asked Pharaoh's permission to bury his father in Canaan. Pharaoh agreed, and Joseph went with a great company of officials, elders, and soldiers. They buried Jacob in the cave of Machpelah, near Abraham and Isaac. Afterward, Joseph and his brothers returned to Egypt. Joseph's brothers feared he would now repay them for their past betrayal. They bowed before him, pleading for forgiveness. But Joseph said, "Do not be afraid. You intended evil against me, but God intended it for good to save many lives." Joseph lived to the age of 110. Before he died, he said, "God will surely come to your aid and bring you up from this land to the land he promised." Joseph made the Israelites swear to carry his bones from Egypt. Then he died and was placed in a coffin in Egypt. This concludes the book of Genesis. Follow, like, and subscribe to In the Amen for some Book of Genesis Bible study, and also the book of Exodus.